The Neverending Story is a complicated roller coaster maze that reaches into the heavens and plunges deep into the bowels of Earth just to teach a simple lesson that could have been done with a cool checkers set instead. What do I mean by all that? I'm going to let you in on it in a minute here. So, The Neverending Story. We are talking about the book. We will talk about the films very, very briefly, but there's 3 films in case you didn't know. But we are talking about the book written by Michael Ende, German author. It is a fantasy book. Came out in 1979. Was translated to English for the first time in 1983. But yes, German author, and yeah, it's a fantasy book. I would say that it is meant for YA. That could be disputed, but young adult. It's complex. It's confusing. It is fantastical. I believe it is somewhat. What's the word I want to use? It's soft is the wrong word, but I mean it has some soft moments, some heart to it. It has some heart. There we go. A lot of people have a connection with this movie, with this book because of the movie. They have a connection with it. A lot of people, I would say in my age range, saw the movie as children and have this really nostalgic pull towards it and have like big emotions about it. I didn't see it until I had read the book, and I had not read the book until I was like 31, I think, 32 maybe 31, 30, 31. So I had not read the book until I was an adult and then watched the movie after, and neither of them were really for me. So no spoilers in this one, but it's a really complicated story that I feel like just doesn't need to be that way. Like I said, I think there's this great, cool message that's definitely not anything new or exciting, but I mean, we have a child who basically escapes his reality through the magic of reading. And the story that you're reading, like, is basically him inserting himself into it's a book that he basically just gets pulled into the book, and he's a character in the book now, and he's reading this book. In a way, it just kind of happens. I don't think he was really attempting to escape his own life necessarily, but through the magic of reading, through beautiful literacy, he kind of finds an inner peace and strength, and so I don't think it's a coming of age story necessarily. I don't think it's a slice of life either. I mean, it is a fantasy book, but it does have this element of like, reading is rad. And I like that part of it, for sure. But the rest of it that's just kind of like the fantasy story, it gets really convoluted and a lot of stuff happens. And I mean, it's a fantasy book and you're creating your own universe. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's foreign to me or anyone else. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's, you do you, man. Like, that's weird stuff, and it's supposed to be, and I don't know, but it was just a little too complex for me to enjoy, and I don't mean complex in like it was over my head. It was just that I feel like we could have told the same story here in a simpler way, in a more fun way, without as many of these like side quests, if you want to call it that. I think that if you are wanting to read a fantasy book, I would suggest other fantasy books rather than this one. But I think just because that movie came out in the 80s, I'm going to sneeze. Never cut sneezes. A lot of people in my age group watched it and they were like, oh no, like there's certain moments that are just like these big moments that people were like traumatized by because they were so emotionally attached to certain characters and things happen. And I don't know, I watched it as an adult and I was like, hey, I don't know. Like, honestly, same thing with Goonies. I watched that as an adult. I was like, yeah, okay, it's a movie. I don't know. It wasn't for me. But this is like this classic book, right? And I just think that it's worth talking about, but only to say that it just didn't hit the spot for me. Yeah, we've got this kid, and he's reading, and then he's in the story, and he's in this fantasy land, and there's people out there helping him, and he's trying to like do tasks and make it back home basically, and he's just lost in this fantasy world, and there's just a lot going on, like a lot going on with it. It's really hard to describe without getting into the nitty-gritty details, but that's why I said at the beginning, it's like a roller coaster maze when it could just be like a cool set of checkers. Like, it's a puzzle. It's like there's a lot happening. It's a game puzzle game, but like you could jazz it up. It could still be cool. It doesn't have to be super stripped down and crazy basic, but like it didn't need to be this. So I feel like this is a weird review because I just feel like I can't say a lot without spoiling stuff, and I don't want to do any spoilers in this one. Also, my memory of reading it, because this was a couple of years back, is a little hazy, and I think it's partially because I was kind of disinterested. Like, the writing style just didn't grab me that much, and there was just too much happening with the story all the time that it was like, if I didn't read it for a couple of days, it was like, wait, what happened last time? Like, 8 different things happened last time? And like, where is this kid? He's doing what now? Okay, like, what's happening? I don't think it is a huge comment on poor writing. You have to remember this is translated as well. And I don't know if it's poor translation or poor writing, or it's just that it wasn't for me. It just is a little... It's not disjointed. There's just too much happening in a way... Maybe, I don't know. That's not... It didn't flow enough for me in a way that my brain made sense of what was happening where, when, why, and how. And yeah, it just... I wasn't invested. There we go. I don't think that the book did a good job of having me invested in the story, and I think it's because we just kind of like get transported to another world, and then you're just like on the run doing stuff without really grounding me into this world and me caring about the characters and their mission. That, I guess, that is what I would... It's a fault there. But moving on, I would say that who's it for? I guess, I don't know. I think a lot more people watch the movie than they did read the book. So, I mean, people in North America maybe. A lot of people that I know that definitely didn't read it, but they watched the movie. I would say if you're into reading and you really loved that movie, then give the book a shot. I didn't like either thing. The story in and of itself just wasn't really for me. But if you loved the movie, I think you would like the book. And if you're just into YA fantasy from the 70s and 80s, maybe you dig it. I think that it was a cool premise, for sure, but it just missed the mark for me. It's low on my shelf, and I don't have the physical... I think if it were now, I would have kept the book. I don't think I'll reread it, but it was kind of more of like, I have a library, and like, if someone else wanted to read it, I wouldn't hugely discourage them, right? And it's not a book that I'm like, oh, that's the worst thing I've ever read, like, get this off my shelf. It just wasn't for me, but also, like, I just don't think it did, like I said, did a great job of, like, having me invested. I will say that, like I said, I think that if you are into the movie, at least the first one, then you would be into the book. However, the author of the book was not happy with the films, with any of those 3 films. He said that they were revolting, I think was the word he used, or that he was disgusted, and that the first movie only has to do with like the first half of the book, really, and yeah, they do some interesting things in the adaptations, but I still think you would dig it. like the book if you like the movie, but he was not happy with the movies at all. He was just like, no. He sued them because he was just like, take the name off of this. Like, it's not the same thing. Like, you did a horrible job with this adaptation. I don't want it to be associated with my book. And he lost that lawsuit. But he was just really unhappy with it. I mean, I think he thinks he created this thing, right? And he didn't want it to be bastardized by the film industry at that time in a way that he maybe saw was trying to just make money off it and not do it justice, or he just didn't like their vision for it. So there's some extra tidbits for you there. But that's what I have to say about the Neverending Story. Again, it's just written in a style, and maybe that's a cultural thing or just that specific author. I don't know. But the translation, too, could have been a thing. It's really hard to pinpoint the issues that I had with it. But it just didn't capture me, and I wasn't very excited about it when I was in it. The Neverending Story.